Hello everybody, welcome to Somber Hill. My name is Jonathan, and today I'm going to show you my custom New 52 Nightwing figure and a diorama I made to go along with him. This custom was a lot of fun. Nightwing is one of my all-time favorite DC characters, and I decided on the Gotham Knights figure by Mcfarlane because I like the more realistic approach to the suit, and I think the arm and leg articulation is really good. But I did want to add some comic details, like the white eyes to the mask, and I wanted to do a New 52 repaint just because I've always been more fond of his red suit. I've seen some people online complain that this figure has odd proportions, but because I was already going to make this figure a diorama so I could pose him in dynamic flying kick positions, I think that would do a pretty good job of hiding some of those issues. So for this project, I wanted to use a bright satin red for the chest emblem and the majority of the red details, but I also used this dark red, I used some dark gray, I used some matte and glossy Mod Podge, and some silver leaf rub and buff for some scuffs on his armor. And then here I used some acetone or a nail polish remover to remove whatever top coat they might have used to seal in the paint, and I did also wash this figure with soap and water during this process as well. After I was done with that, I got some smaller brushes and some white primer, and I went to work on priming the figure before I painted it red. Once the figure was primed and ready, I started painting with the satin paint, and I started to do multiple coats because I wanted to make sure that the paint color was consistent throughout the whole figure. Here I started painting with the darker red, and I wanted to do kind of like an accent on the thighs in those little side slits that he has. I actually thought this came out super clean after the figure was finished. And I painted his shoes gray to get rid of his ugly sneakers. I also decided to paint his back armor plate that holds his sticks dark red. Originally I painted his sticks black and yellow, but I didn't really like the way that turned out, so later on you'll see I actually switched to red. I think the highlight of this custom is probably when I added the smirk to Nightwing's face. I submerged the head in simmering water and then took a needle and basically just pushed it up into the corner of the mouth until I got the shape that I wanted, and then I ran it underneath some cold water and it hardened that way. I made a couple of mistakes, but all I had to do is resubmerge the head in the water and then it would return to its original shape, and then I could form it again. At this point, I wanted to show off the progress thus far. I think the body came out fantastic. I also have his sticks that I went from blue to yellow to red, and then his eyes that I painted white off camera just because I thought it would be too difficult to try to capture that. But I think all in all, these turned out awesome. Moving on to the next step, I wanted to start weathering his armor. So on his knee pads and his elbow pads, I used the rub and buff to scuff them, and then I did the same thing for his sticks to look like he's been in a couple fights. I then went ahead and made sure I sealed everything on the figure with a matte and glossy Mod Podge. Here I was doing the same thing with his sticks, just making sure all the paint is sealed. And then this is another look at the head after I painted the eyes. I think these came out super clean. I went in and any edges that I overpainted I cleaned up with a small little tip Sharpie, and it came out really well. I just prefer the white eyes on a more realistic looking head. I wish they would do that more in live action movies and TV shows and stuff like that. Now I knew I wanted to use the Mezco Friday the 13th Part 3 base for my Nightwing display all the way back when I did my Red Hood video, and if you watch that video you'll see at the end I had him displayed similarly to this. I do really think that this figure benefits from being posed in more dynamic ways, like a flying kick pose, anything up in the air for the custom display that I wanted to make, but it also fits the character coming from a circus acrobat background. To start building up the diorama, I got some foam and a foam cutter from the craft store. I already had a clear idea that I wanted to make some sort of distressed pillar stuck in the ground, so I started by cutting it into different pieces, and then I decided to take away some from the sides and from the top that I would later use to make rocks that go around the pillar. After I was done with that, this is the pillar that I was left with. I think it came out really cool, and I knew that when I painted it later on, the shading was going to help highlight some of those edges that I dug out. But then I took the base and I covered the parts that I didn't want to get paint on with tape. And after preparing the base, I started painting a couple coats of gray. Once the base was covered, I started gluing down the pillar. And I went around the edges of the pillar just to make sure everything was secure. I used a sealer on the foam just to make it easier on myself so I didn't have to do so many layers of paint so that it didn't soak in right away. Then I took those extra pieces I cut and I glued them down as rocks. I then started painting the pillar. I did a base coat of dark gray like the base, and then I went over it with light gray to make color gradients and try and make it look even more like stone. cool idea to use this ivy green to add some color to the rock and look like some moss growing up the side before I actually added some craft moss. I used the same green to paint the ground, but would later go over this with brown off camera to mimic the look of mud. And then these are some rocks that I made from a previous diorama out of polymer clay that I decided to use in this diorama. These look a lot more realistic than the foam rocks, but I think it helps add variation, so I like having both. To add some plant life, I put some leaves from aquarium plants in the middle of the diorama and painted them a little bit. And then I also created some moss on the pillar and some other parts of the diorama. After everything was on the diorama, I used the glossy Mod Podge to seal everything that was going to be wet, and then matte for any of the rocks that were above the mud. I think the diorama itself turned out really cool. You could use it for like a multitude of things, but I'm glad I got to use it for this character. And now enjoy a slideshow of the best photos I took after I was finished. Well everyone, I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this project as much as I did working on it. I think that this figure turned out really fantastic. I'm more of a fan of the red suit, so I'm a little biased, but it definitely looks more like Nightwing to me now. It's a little bit of comic influence mixed in with a more realistic suit. I'm just a fan of the way that those things blend together. But do not worry, this is not all for the Bat family. I have plenty more custom ideas lined up. I'm not going to spoil anything, but if you're a fan of more Bat family characters, I got you. I'll see you guys next time.